anybody doesn't want to be seen in a recording, if I get to share that, again, generally I just share that with the people that have attended the session. I'm going to potentially try and redo these probably a little bit more professionally so I can share them with a wider population. But these presentations, if I do share any element of these presentations, I'll cut them up and it won't have anybody in those. So, but if you'd rather not be in a recording, then please turn your cameras off. I'm going to unmute everybody now. Sorry, I'm going to mute everybody now. So if you have any questions, then please pop them in the chat box. I'll have a go at picking up the chat box. But the idea of this evening is to kind of share some thoughts. I've called it Myths of the Game. I'm not sure that's the best title for it in a way, but it's certainly things that I come across in conversations with students, with players, during a round, or pro-am partners during a round, after a round, during lessons, after lessons, before lessons. And I kind of think it's they're falling into cliches, maybe, believing in myths. So I wanted to share some of those. I'm going to do a kind of a short presentation and then hopefully open it out to a bit of discussion. What are your experiences? What are you understanding about that subject? And what does that kind of mean to you? And then we'll move on to the next one. If I don't get to answer everybody's questions, that's cool. Then I'll pick those up at a later date. And it might also mean that we don't actually cover all the areas that I've prepared. But again, that's equally cool. That just gives us some content to discuss on another day. So massive thank you to everybody coming. Again, we've got some new faces and voices to listen to this evening. Thanks everyone who planned to come on Friday for moving it today. I hope you all enjoyed your VE celebrations and extended weekend. And welcome to everybody who can now make this evening's session, who wouldn't normally be able to make the Friday session. I think that's pretty much all I want to kind of kick off with. We've got one more coming in now. And I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully, actually, can somebody just unmute to make sure and just give me a heads up that you can see my screen? It should say Myths of the Game, looking through a different lens.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect, thank you very much. So, yeah, I think it's interesting because this topic for me, I think as human beings, this is an area of interest. It's not my expertise, but it's definitely an area of interest where I think the human element within us, we sometimes objectify the game, where it's just a game of numbers and it's just a game of this and that, and where actually there's a human element behind what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we can be conditioned into thinking certain things and thinking certain ways. One of my favorite websites or places that I go to on Pinterest is Sketchplanations, which are really cool little pictures which share some really powerful stories. And I just wanted to share these with you. So cognitive biases, how you think and how our thinking can be biased. So hindsight bias, nice little picture there. But in our world, how many times have we stood over the golf ball or we've played a golf shot, and after that golf shot, we've gone, oh, I should have stepped away from that shot. I knew I was going to hit that shot. Loss aversion. We can often get overexcited by dropping shots and negative results and not share the equal enthusiasm and excitement for positive results. Recency bias. I think this is a really powerful one, especially when we're evaluating a round of golf. And for example, like I was having this conversation just the other day with the girls from the England team, where we were talking about reviewing a round of golf. And if I hold three really good putts on the last 3 holes, I might walk off after that round and consider that I putted really well that day, when the reality is I just had 3 good putting holes on the last 3 holes, and that's affected the way I feel about that shot and the way I think about my putting. Whereas the reality is I probably had 33, 34 putts, and you know, that's not my standard. My standard wants to be 29, 30 putts. Equally, it can work the other way around. I could 3-putt the last couple of greens and think I've putted rubbish, when actually I've had 29, 30 putts and I've actually putted really well. I just happened to 3-putt the last couple of greens. Equally, there's one of my other favourites is when you stand on the tee and you think, oh, last time I hit this one out of bounds, I better not do that again. I wonder if we thought that on a few occasions. So we've got to be very careful of recency bias. Cognitive bias, again, predictable patterns of thought and behaviour leading to incorrect conclusions. So that would kind of link to, I knew that would happen. I anticipated that, and it almost becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Heuristics are kind of mental shortcuts we take. So the thing I liken to here are, how many times have we looked at a magazine or a YouTube video or an Instagram post or Facebook post, and that's been the secret? Or we almost had a practice session after, and we thought, oh, that was the secret. I'm hitting it really well now, and if only I'd been told that all that time ago. And then only to find out there's a bit of a honeymoon period, and just because those thousands of people liked that post or had made all them positive comments, it didn't actually work for you. And logical fallacy, again, one of my favorites. I think the classic is practice makes perfect. Therefore, I'm going to practice, so I'm going to get perfect to what I do. And another favorite of mine is I always get my practice swing right. My practice swing's always really good, and then I can't do it with the golf ball. And I think that's an incredibly flawed argument. So they're the kind of things that go on. And what I want to share with you are some stories and some things that you can start considering as you play around. And you can utilize some of the stuff that we've already spoken about in previous sessions. So for those of you that are new this evening, I'm going to send you all the content of the previous session so you can have a catch up. But hopefully you should still be able to get the benefit of this evening and the stories and the lessons I want you to take away from this evening, even if you haven't attended those previous sessions. So that's a little bit of background for you, and the dangers of how we think. And my first one that I want to cover is this idea of confidence. And I often get people coming to me for golf lessons. I want to feel more confident. I want you to help me be more confident. And always, when I'm confident, so I'll ask the question, what do you do when you play well? Oh, I feel confident. And what do you do? I don't play very well and I don't feel very confident. And I want us to be really careful of this. For me, confidence is an abstract word. It just means something to someone. And I can be as confident in doing something as much as I can be confident in not doing something. So as much as I could be confident in my ability to do something, I could be equally confident that in my ability not to be able to do something. So I like this idea of I'll tell you exactly how much I like it in a minute. But there's this idea, and I think this is the process that we follow. We kind of have thoughts. So, for example, why do I never play well with a card in my hand? Or why can't I get it over the water on the 12th at Mill Green? Or something like that then leads to feelings. So I'm not very confident playing in the middle. Or I'm just not very confident playing over this water. I don't often get the ball up in the air long enough. That leads to actions, which then could be that you don't go through your shot routine, you don't consider all your options, you change the timings of the way you go about the shot, you make different decisions, and then that leads to ultimately negative results because you've changed what you normally do, and that then reinforces your belief that you're not very good when you're not very confident, or you can't achieve that, and then it just becomes that vicious cycle. And one of the things I'm interested in, and I like this idea of looking through different lenses, is I truly believe that the same event can happen, but how you feel about it entirely depends on the lens that you're looking through, in particular how you might feel about that. So I wanted to deal with this, and you can see how that cycle might work against you, but equally it could work for you. So one of the things I wanted to share with the the girls in Portugal when we did warm weather training. I wanted to explore this as an idea, and I was just blunt up front when we're looking for performance. And I said to them, look, I don't really care how you feel. What I do care about is what you do. And what I mean by that is, of course, I care about how they feel. I don't want them to feel angry or frustrated, but we can't control that. I can't control that. What we can start to do is start taking control of our actions. So I think this is quite a cool little idea. We came up with the idea of putting emojis and using emojis on overlaid on a course map. And what they did is they put down an emoji which meant something to them. And then that allowed us to have conversations afterwards. And what we discovered by the end of the week is actually the girls started to recognize that if they noticed that an emotion or a feeling was getting in the way of what they normally do when they play their best golf, then they could deal with it much better. They could take charge of their actions. And I think confidence is as much associated with control and certainty. You know, if I feel a sense of certainty when I have confidence, well, can I have a sense of certainty about the actions that I take? Well, who's in control of that? Hopefully you are. We've talked about shot routines. We've talked about quality practice. And if they're well practiced, well rehearsed behaviors, routines that you go through, then actually it shouldn't matter how you feel. And if there's a question mark over whether you're choosing a shot or your shot strategy is on the brink of your certainty, i.e., well, it's going to take a fairly exceptional shot for me to pull this off. Well, if you go for that, great, go for it, have some fun going for it, but don't beat yourself up afterwards if you don't pull it off, because you know the reality, understanding the shot patterns that we've spoken about previously, that actually that's only one of many options that could have come out in firing that gun and hitting that golf ball. So I think this would be really cool, and I'd be really keen for any of you guys, if you've got a course map of Mill Green, or maybe we can find one online, is to have a go at that and put those emojis down. Understand what they mean to you. I'm more than happy to talk you through that. And then start to recognize how does that shift and change behavior. And if you start to recognize that and you start to understand that actually your actions aren't driven by your feelings, or even potentially your thoughts, they're your choice, and you can choose to do those on a regular basis, then it kind of doesn't matter how you feel. In particular, I liked this player on the left who actually changed the size of the emoji depending on the magnitude of how much she felt that emotion, which was really cool. So ultimately, I want control. I'm looking for certainty. So a top tip in the short term for you would be, if ever you find yourself using the word confident, or you start to question yourself, I don't feel very confident in this moment, change the word confidence to control. I don't feel in control at this moment, because then that allows you to ask the question, well, what can I control? Or what is it, first of all, that I don't feel in control of? You can deal with that better. And then second of all, you can start to ask, well, what can I control? Can I control the action plan that I designed for this shot? Can I control the timing of, can I control being in the think box? Can I control going into the play box? Can I control the timing that I spend in the play box? Can I control my reflections after I played the shot? And hopefully the answer to all of those is yes. So that's where I am on confidence, and wondered where and what you thought might, what your thoughts on that might be.
Hi Mark, it's Graham. I know with my regular playing partners, they're always saying to me, "Oh, yeah, well, I never play well in competitions. Never, don't feel I can score." And I suggest to them, well, do what I do: score every time. Take a scorecard and score it every time you play. And then when the competition comes around, it's nothing unusual. You're just doing your normal thing.
Yep, that desensitizes it, doesn't it, a little bit? So you can't go, well, it's nothing special in that scenario. Yeah.
because a lot of them they change their routines when there's a competition on.
Yeah.
You know, some of them they don't warm up before they play normally. Competition comes around, they spend 20 minutes warming up, and of course it's all different, and they all go to pot.
And I think that's hopefully that's the big message for me, Graham, is and thanks for raising that, is it is about behaviours and shifting behaviours and making sure that, you know, if you do change behaviour, it's more a conscious choice rather than it's just something that happens to you because of the way you happen to be feeling in that moment, because you play a game that is going to play with your emotions. And you're going to have ups and downs all the time. So, and that's I think that's part of the fun of the game and part of the challenge of the game. So
I understand what you mean. I prefer playing in competitive situations. I think it focuses me more, think about shots more. There's just two specific shots at Mill Green that I don't like. In the winter, the second shot into 8, and I'm feeling I've usually got a guy I usually play against. Like, he's got a shot on me there, so I'm usually having to go for the green. You know, if you've got around 200 yards in, it's quite daunting. And also, I think the tee shot off of 17 as well. I traditionally used to slice the ball. Started it a bit straighter, but I still tend to go in the trees on the left to compensate for the slice that isn't there anymore. And you know, it's a psychological thing. You can be driving well for the whole round, and then all of a sudden it will go to pot because of the confidence thing. And I completely recognise the logic in looking at control as opposed to confidence.
yeah, good. So when you stand on that tee next, it's right. What can I control? What do I normally do? Because that's where the thinking gets in the way, and we'll cover it a bit later as well. But that's when the thinking gets in the way, and it links into your practice, it links into your shot routines, it links into understanding your personal par. And again, you talk about you have to go for it in 2. Do you? You know, I would just ask that question. Do you? I don't know. I mean, maybe you feel like
it's a good question.
Yeah. But again, it's interesting how that's a way of thinking that you've got into, and that's put you under pressure, which has made you feel uncomfortable, because what you're now talking about is that the stretch point is too far. You're looking at a golf shot that is possibly at the moment beyond your abilities, or not even beyond your abilities, but you've got to hit that exceptional shot. So when we looked at that shot pattern, if you saw that, there's that one shot that's out there where you're kind of in a scenario now where, well, I have to hit that one. If it was someone like myself playing that shot, well, I'd be quite confident because the center of my shot pattern would probably be where your exceptional shot is. Yeah. So it's about matching that. Well, actually, I recognize that this shot is a really tough shot. I recognize that this is going to take an exceptional shot. So I'm going to embrace this opportunity. I've made the decision that I'm going to go for it. Right, what do I now need to do to give myself the best chance of that happening? And you suddenly go from this nervous, anxious, golfer who's fearing what might happen next to this energized golfer who's really looking forward to the opportunity and the challenge.
I think one of the things is trying to identify what is confidence and what is lack of confidence. So, I mean, they're words. What does it mean? So I kind of relate it to, if I'm confident about something, I kind of know what the outcome is going to be. So I'm just very focused on that outcome. If I'm not confident, I have a lot of cluttering thoughts. I'm thinking about what might happen. How do I do it? How do I do that? So it's not necessarily the emotion of confidence or lack of confidence. It's the consequence of it, what it does to your thought patterns. Because you can fear a shot, but you can still focus on it and execute to the best of your ability.
Yeah, 100% love that. And it's how that self-awareness, again, something we'll talk about a bit later, but that's spot on. You should be doing this. Why aren't you hosting this? Brilliant. I love that. There's a chat box. BG's gone, and you can be overconfident. Yeah. And I just think confident is this abstract word that I just think is actually unhelpful. It just influences and impacts the way you think, and as was mentioned there, clutters your thoughts up. And it's when that happens, I don't think you can overly control that, but when that happens, it's right. What I can take control back of is the processes I'm going to go through right now. Are my behaviors right now? And I think that's really important. Okay, cool. If you can unmute yourselves again, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And we'll go into the next topic. So, practice makes perfect. It's a classic cliche. It's obviously not true. Here's a video. It's 4 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole lot, but please enjoy.
There's a fairway wood out here, so he's blasting away. He's just trying to get some kind of little bullet. Wow, what a shot. This is right at the flagstick. Oh, my goodness. Get away from me. You can cut enough to get it on. His block pushed it back there, missed all the people. That's good. Doesn't get much better than that. I'll say that is one heck of a shot. That's actually a birdie chip from there. Take a good look at it because you'll never see anybody else there again. He made 3 here at 11 yesterday. It is low draw, I think, back of the right foot. Piece of cake. They got it to turn over. This is just fabulous. What a great shot.
So he obviously holds that putt. It's a full 4-minute video, and it's an absolute pleasure to watch. I'll drop the link in the follow-up email for you so you can enjoy the full 4 and a bit minutes. My point of showing that is if practice made perfect, then he would never be in those positions. He would never be in those positions. And I think a really important thing to understand here is, I guess, defining, the dangers between perfection and striving for perfection and striving for excellence. I'm very fortunate to be part of the England Golf coaching team, who are currently going through some Q&As with players of England players from the past that have gone on to win on a world stage. And we had the pleasure of spending some time with Tommy Fleetwood, and something that he said that struck me was, and it was just so matter of fact, is a bad practice session or round does not make me a bad golfer. And I watch some people practice, and I watch and I listen to people talk to themselves in golf lessons. And there's that sense of striving for perfection. And perfect for me is not something that should be associated with golf. It's not what the golf course is asking of you in any way, shape or form. Shifting that as a mindset, we need to understand, and we spoke about it a bit in quality practice, it's not just about, and we're going to talk a bit about, again, skill and technique. What am I trying to practice? I'm trying to develop skill. I'm trying to learn new skills. Where most people go wrong is they try and establish technique, and they make the assumption that technique transfers to skill. And then they feel that there's a perfect technique. I need to develop this technique in a perfect fashion. I've got it perfectly. And when I get that, then I'm going to start getting results. Well, that doesn't happen. And that kind of mindset, perfection, I've just got a couple of definitions there. Perfectionism is very black and white. There's no gray area. And anything other than perfect is deemed as failure. And I kind of put in there, golf is a very gray game. I've seen lots of golfers who hit better shots than they've been hitting at the end of the lesson, at the start of the lesson, but still not congratulating themselves enough for them to reinforce the progress that they've made, because it's not perfect. Whereas excellence is about continuous improvement. It's about raising personal standards, exceeding personal expectations. It's about being the best you can be with what you have in that moment. And when you're practicing, I want you to understand that you're practicing not just physical golf skills, but you're practicing mental golf skills, mental skills that you can apply to golf. And so I have no issue with you chasing perfection, because again, there's a lot of research saying that actually champion sports people who might be deemed as champions in their domain, they have perfectionist tendencies. And so I kind of like this picture here. It's like perfectionistic striving, drive to attain accomplishment. They leave no stone unturned and are motivated by positive outcomes. No issue with that. But I do have issues with golfers who have a desire to avoid mistakes. They have a fear of failure, and they have a fear of being viewed negatively by others. And that's an unhealthy place to be. And I not only see that a lot, unfortunately, in some of the later teenagers that I work with, but I actually see those tendencies sometimes in club golfers, and it impacts their enjoyment of the game and often how much they can progress. So developing, when you practice, you're not only developing, as I say, golf skills, you're practicing self skills, if you like, developing a self-awareness, developing self-regulation, and going through self-reflection. And again, tying that into understanding our personal path, understanding what our shot patterns look like so we can apply appropriate strategies, understanding important elements of the game to work on, shot routines and quality practice. That's all going to help you develop those skills so that you can play better golf and have more fun while you're out there. So practice makes perfect is just absolutely not a phrase that I would work with. Practice makes permanent, possibly. And again, that speaks back to, well, if practice makes permanent, it's really important you understand how to practice, not just what to practice. So there's some thoughts on perfect practice. Anyone got any comments on that or thoughts on that? No. Cool. I just want to give you these kind of opportunities. Hopefully you'll get some thoughts. They'll get some thoughts stirring. And if you get any questions later, do feel free to jump in. Cool. I'll go back to sharing. Right. So what are you thinking about when you play good golf? Oh, I don't think of anything. I'm not thinking of anything. It just happens. Oh, that's interesting. So how are you going to repeat that when you want it? How are we going to repeat that when it's not just happening? Oh, I don't know. I just won't think of anything. And I'm not sure that's a viable way forward. So I want to kind of bust the myth that says you're not thinking about anything when you play your best golf. Thoughts or thinking. I've had some interesting conversations recently with a coach from Liverpool, and he's kind of massive into this, and I kind of like this as an idea. Thought is something that happens to you. Thinking is something that you actively engage in. So don't miss this shot might be a thought that leads to thinking. Don't go left, don't go out of bounds. That's a thought that leads to thinking. This feels uncomfortable, a thought that leads to thinking. Or I'm not sure I've got the right club, a thought that leads to thinking. And where that thinking takes you is really important. When you're thinking and when you're playing well, you will have a very clear purpose to achieving something which may be related to a shot, a hole, a round, or even a longer term golf. So endeavor is at the forefront of your thinking when you're playing well. Reflection, when you're playing your best golf, you will be going through. And we talked about it in the shot routine and how you can reflect. You get that information between your action plan, the predicted outcome, and the actual outcome. You will be going through that reflection process. You will be constantly adapting, recognizing what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, what you might need to change. That's a thinking process that you'll be going through. We've even used the word think box. It was mentioned before we started the presentation as part of our routine. There's thinking going on when you play well. Conscious control is when you are taking control of those actions in order to perform all the many tasks. You think about the amount of tasks that are involved in executing a golf shot and playing a golf shot. You're taking conscious control of that. Your shot routines, again, your decision making, any moves that you might be working on in the swing, or the ball flight, or the amount of spin. For more skillful golfers, you might be talking, they might be working on the amount of spin that they're putting. They're not just hitting the golf ball and seeing what happens to it. They're taking conscious control of that. strategizing when you perform well. You'll strategize. You'll be using your shot centers. You'll be considering what if scenarios. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And we heard that the players going through that process last week in the videos that we showed. We strategize about how do I wrestle back momentum after I've just played a bad shot? How do I keep momentum going when I'm on a good run? And self-monitoring is about constantly scanning my body and my mind and my feelings and thoughts so I can manage them during that round of golf. And I think all of those things happening, but the difference is that they're in flow. You're not thinking hard. You're thinking it's kind of your body and your mind are working as one. They're working together. And again, I think actually it was mentioned earlier, cluttered thinking. When you're not playing your best golf, your thinking is cluttered. But please don't think or consider that when you're playing your best golf, you're not thinking of anything. Because I think you can play your best golf more often if you can start recognizing this is the process that's going on and this is the thinking that's going on, because you'll be able to repeat it more often and you'll develop those as skills. So the idea that you're not thinking, although what I will say is there's definitely a sense of just doing it, the classic Nike phrase, when you're doing this really well, you will have a sense of just doing it. You won't kind of be going, oh, I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking of that. You will just be doing it, but you will be thinking. And I really put an emphasis on this and want to mention this because we need to put this into our practice. So when you're on the driving range, and again, links into quality practice, and you're going through that, I'm just hitting golf balls and I'm just hitting it really well. Well, if there's not any kind of thinking process there, if we don't up the challenge, if we don't start to create that gap between a predictable outcome and the actual outcome, then we're going to stop learning and we're going to stop getting better. So again, I'll hand it over. If anyone turns their mic on and wants to chat, I'll stop sharing. But if there's a little silence for 20 seconds or so, I'll just carry on. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Hi, Mark. I think one of the things thinking, especially in competition golf, is when you get to say the 15th hole, you start thinking about what score you need rather than what clubs you're going to hit. You might be thinking, well, I need to finish with 3 pars and bogey, whatever. And then you start making different decisions based on where you need to go. Now that can really mess up, what you might do in a social game. It's a different thing. It's personally why I prefer to play even non-social games, perhaps for small amounts of cash, because it makes you concentrate on those same things all the time. So competition is less different. Exactly the same as Graham said earlier. It gives you that motivation to still maintain that thought. But I do think the score gets in the way of where you actually are in terms of thinking about other things. That makes sense?
Yeah, really good points. And I think again, hopefully it just comes back to a lot of the stuff we've spoken before, in a sense of the things that strike me there that are going to potentially throw you out are all the outcome-based stuff. That's all the things that you can't control. And one of the skills that I think we need to learn, if we want to play our best golf more often, and if we're striving for excellence and we want to continue to get better, is to start recognizing those moments and have strategies in place or tools in place that allow us to start taking control of that. And rather than letting that happen to me, so all of a sudden I get to the 15th, I've got a good round, or I start thinking about if I could just finish par. But then the new world handicapping system will probably let you do that anyway. You can NR, can't you? And it will just put you down as par. But we won't tell anybody that. So yeah, and it's all of a sudden that starts to get in the way of the decision making, the processes. But if we think about what we've done to date and all the things we've covered so far, there's a ton of stuff that's actually it's kind of it's not easy to do. That'd be the wrong thing to say, but they're frameworks around which you can go, do you know what? I've recognised I'm having these thoughts that aren't contributing towards me playing my best golf. So now I can kick back into the shot routine, or I can kick back into, right, what's my goal again? What am I trying to achieve? What do I need to take control of? And all of this, I'm talking about these in kind of independently of each other, but actually the skills are all kind of intertwined with each other. And if you start getting better at one, you'll start getting better at all of them. But yeah, it's a really good point.
Mark, I like the idea that, as you say, of developing thinking skills and actually seeing that as a positive part of the whole process. Because I remember a really good round of golf, and bizarrely, it was a way course, and I had a practice round, and I just followed what it said in my yardage chart. And even when I triple bogeyed the next hole, I was back on par, and it was a weird feeling, but I think that was part of that process. And it's then, how do I develop those skills so I do that every time I play? And so there's work to be done, but it's a different process. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant, because everyone goes to the practice ground to go and work on their swing and work on their technique. And again, all of that for me is based on a false assumption that if I swing it well, I'm going to play better. And there's lots of, it's probably more relevant at a higher level, where really good swingers don't make a lot of money because they're not skillful. They just got good technique. And they're not skillful with what they have. They may have the physical abilities, but don't have the mental or emotional abilities. And then bringing it back down, I think, well, why can't we can all develop those skills? And again, it's based over time. So when we practice, I think, let's understand that we're not just practicing physical skills, we're practicing mental skills as well. And that's, again, where the quality practice comes in. And the other thing, I was going to mention is, this also leads us now, and I think this is a really important thing to embrace, is that the golf course, when you go out and play on a Saturday, or when you go and play in the medal, or when you go and play in the club championships, it's really just another practice session, right? You're only going to keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Or what you might not do in those scenarios is just push boundaries, quite like you would do if you were in a full-blown quality practice learning session. You might go, right, I'm just going to optimize these and go through, do the things that I always do. So all of a sudden, the golf course becomes as valuable a place to practice as the driving range. So every time you swing a golf club, it's got meaning and purpose to it, which is exciting. Babs has put down, I find the challenge is reframing limiting thoughts in the moment in order to have the control to give myself the best opportunity to perform the shot to my best ability. And again, I think that's great in a sense that there's an opportunity there to get better. How can we, if I read that right, start to look at reframing shots, reframing opportunities? It starts raining, and we don't like rain, and it's okay, well, is that reframe of, I hate this, or my grips get wet, I can't hold the golf club, I've got 4 holes to go, I had a really good score going, it's a real shame because I thought I could have got my handicap cut today. Well, what if we reframe it? Oh, perfect, here's a good opportunity to learn how to play in the rain. It's a bit cheesy and a bit classic, but it's an example, and they're the kind of things that we can start learning. And once we start asking those questions, I find the challenge is reframing limiting thoughts. Perfect. Well, let's ask a quality question about that so we can get you thinking about new ideas and new opportunities from that. So great post, Babs. Thank you. Right, I'm going to go into screen share again. Oh, where's that gone? We don't want to look at those. There we go. Right. So, always and never. This kind of links into self-talk. And these are words that are often used, and they're very dangerous words. For me, the 3 things that stand out when we talk about always and never, so things like, I always mess this tee shot up. I never play well with a scorecard in my hand. I never hole meaningful putts, or I always miss important ones. one of the things I have a little bit of fun with here is someone says that to me, like, always? Never? Well, you've never hold a meaningful part. You always miss the important ones. When we catastrophize a scenario, or we filter out the positives, or we overgeneralize, the danger with that is it can filter through the rest of our game. And it starts to put pressure on. So, for example, if it's putting, it then starts to put pressure on me to chip it close. And then that starts to have an impact on my chipping. So I start to catastrophize and filter out the positives in that scenario. I overgeneralize, and all of a sudden that then puts a pressure on my approach play. And then that starts to have negative, and all of a sudden I'm really not enjoying being out on the golf course. And they can be throwaway. Sometimes people will say this and it kind of, they don't really mean it. But we just got to be careful. And when I start to have conversations with students, these are two words that get used a lot. And I don't think the awareness of their use is recognized. And what we've got to start doing is thinking about how we change that and what actions can we take. Again, it leads back into behavior and what impact is using those words having on my behavior. So I always hit it out of bounds on the 10th. I always slice it into those trees. Always? Can you not recognize when you didn't do that? When did you last not do that? Oh, actually, I didn't do it last time. Oh, okay, so it's not always then. No, but I normally do it. It's another one of my favorites, normally. I normally hold all those parts. You normally hold all those parts. Anyway, let me go back. I digress. Let me go back to my tee shot. So, okay, when did you do it like before that then? I don't know. I can't remember. So it kind of links into that almost recency bias that we spoke about right at the start, and kind of logical fallacy as well. You start to create these beliefs that lead you down a path that ultimately is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, where, of course, if you believe that's what's going to happen, then that's going to start happening more and more. So we really have to be careful with the language. And if we find ourselves using always and never and normally, let's be really careful about when we're using those, how we're using those, and let's start, if they're thoughts, let's start thinking about how we're thinking to switch that back and start breaking those beliefs, because they're not true. And if they are true, then great, there's an opportunity for you to become a better golfer. So really understanding always and never, and that self-talk, I think is an important one, because as I say, they're two words that get used far too often. And just that concept of catastrophizing, filtering out the positives. One of the things about filtering out the positives is I often I went through someone once said to me, you should use was kind of having a discussion in a similar vein. He said, you should use the Chelsea postcode. I went, the Chelsea postcode? What do you mean the Chelsea postcode? He went, SW3. Some will, some won't. So what? And it kind of struck me. Well, yeah, of course some will, some won't. And so what? Yeah, I'm out here to enjoy myself. I'm out here to have fun. One of the other things is go through in a process. If you really understand your shot routines, again, I'm referencing to previous presentations. If we understand our shot routines, we can then start rationally thinking, well, what's the best that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? And what's likely to happen? And again, it's just a nice way of having you kind of have that, going back to the thought and thinking, always and never are probably thoughts. Let's transfer that into some constructive thinking that's going to help us start breaking that belief, or certainly not letting that become a belief. So understanding rationally, oh, okay, well, that's the best that could happen. That's the worst that could happen. That's likely to happen. And if that's putting you in trouble, if you're going through that process, then you're choosing the wrong shot. So if you keep choosing the wrong shot, then yeah, you probably always will put it in the water or hit it out of bounds. So that's kind of my brief on always and never. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Does anyone recognize themselves using those kind of words and having those conversations?
I'm afraid so, yes.
So do you feel like, Mike, you've got something that you could kind of work with now? Would you recognize that now we've kind of made that explicit, that conversation, you might even try to recognize yourself having oh yeah, I've just said a never, and then even if it's just, let me remember the last time I didn't do that.
Yeah, it's very thought-provoking. The worry is about all this is it's raising more thoughts that I want to have in my mind every time I address the ball.
So you're
got to somehow declutter my mind when I stand on the ball, I think.
Yeah. So that is a skill, Mike. That is something that you learn to do by developing these behaviors. And again, that shot routine, the one that we did last week, I think, well, let's understand personal part. Yeah, we go through, yeah, let's understand. All of a sudden, that gives you a whole load of new options. And all of a sudden, those pressures aren't there. You go through shot routines and understanding shot patterns and where's your shot center. All of a sudden, now you're choosing shots that aren't putting you under pressure. You know what's likely to happen. You know what the best could happen is. You know what the worst that could happen is. And that can allow you to play a bit more freedom. You can start practicing, regardless of whether it's on the practice range or the golf course or the putting green or the par 3 course. Not necessarily you understand, but you've got a better understanding of how you can practice better just to keep stretching yourself to progress. You can practice well practiced, rehearsed behaviors that will kick in when you start to have those negative thoughts. So yeah, they're skills. We all want to stand over the golf ball with certainty. We all want to stand over the golf ball knowing that we want it to go where we want it to finish. But it's going to take a lot more than practicing a golf swing to actually truly bring that to life. And you know, hopefully over the last 5 or 6 weeks we've explored that. But yeah, great point. Mick Babs has gone. Using stats is a great way to debunk always and never. 100%. I'm actually working on a bit of a stats thing at the moment. Just a very simple thing in recording information, but that is a superb way. And I'd encourage everybody. We talked about it in the separation value one, about keeping statistics that are relevant to you, that are meaningful to you, and where you want to go based on the score that you want to shoot and your personal par. So that is definitely a great way of debunking always and never. Mick, never can be used in a positive way. So Jack Nicklaus stated he never missed a 3-foot putt. Yeah, he did. It's a good use of never. So Jack Nicklaus, I didn't finish that for those that haven't seen it. He said that he never missed a 3-foot putt on the back 9 of a major. And one journalist actually put his hand up and he said, Mr. Nicklaus, you missed a 3-footer on the 12th at Augusta or something in 1960, whatever. And he just looked the journalist straight in the eye and he said, I've never missed a 3-foot putt on the back 9 of a major. So yeah, I mean, it can be, that's good use of never. So hopefully you're picking up on the idea that I'm kind of covering a bad use of never. Brilliant. Let's go back to share screen. Last one. Okay. I have to get worse to get better. So we spoke about quality practice. Anybody who has to get worse to get better, I know that means probably different things to different people, but I genuinely don't believe it's true. And even anybody who has lessons with me and feels that that's been the case, I'm more than happy to have that conversation either one-to-one or now. Yes, if you're changing technique, then it might throw your timing out. It might improve your timing. It might shift, coordination, motor patterns, motor skills. If you're changing technique, it might throw those things out. So even though the technique might improve, you might not produce the ball flight, or golf shot that you hoped you might. And if that's what you mean by I have to get worse to get better, there might be, that might be true in that scenario. But I want us to understand, and I want us to go back to this picture on the left-hand side, skill versus technique. By improving your technique, or please don't assume that by improving your technique, it will upskill you. If you work on skill and you're developing skill, the ability to control a golf ball or the ability to predict what's going to happen to the golf ball, then I truly don't believe you have to get worse to get better. You can't take away skill. I can change your technique, but I can't take away your skill. And when we understand that and we utilize that, then we can practice more freely, depending on the goal of a practice session. For example, I want to improve and change my technique. And I gave an example of myself in the quality practice session where I was changing technique. My goal was to change the way I moved and my movement pattern with a golf club. But then I didn't critique myself for not hitting perfect golf shots, or what I might deem as perfect golf shots or playable golf shots, because I understood the process I was going through. And I understood that process would take time. I accepted that process would take time. Therefore, I wasn't de-skilling myself, if that's a word, which meant that it was never going to have an impact on me on the golf course next time I went out and played. If I didn't play well on the golf course next time I went out and played, it wasn't because I have to get worse to get better. It's because I wasn't having a good day. So I think that's a really interesting one to tackle. And for those that weren't, or it's your first time when you missed a quality practice, I would just take us straight to this right-hand side of the screen here, where we talked about quality practice. I think it's a good reminder for those that did attend, that quality practice, if the goal is learning new skills, then learning occurs when the appropriate amount of information is available to you during practice, which in turn depends on the functional difficulty of the task. If you are getting a lot worse, the task is too difficult. We have to pitch that difficulty level just right, where it stretches you and it challenges you appropriately. Information comes from two sources. It comes from creating an action plan that allows you to predict an outcome that you can compare to the actual outcome. And then the feedback based on your commitment to the task and the execution of the task allows you to adjust or reinforce the action plan when you have your next go. So if the goal of practice is learning, then when prediction starts to match outcome, less information is presented and the task difficulty needs to be raised. If you follow that journey, then you definitely don't have to get worse to get better. If your expectation is, I'm hitting a big 50-yard slice, I want a technical change that's going to get me hitting it 50 yards further and straighter every time, and you look at something on YouTube or you have a lesson with a coach who attempts to give you that, and if you get lucky, then it might work first time. But if you don't, then that changing technique, and it's the technical part of this, throws all your timing out, or can throw all your timing out, your coordination out, and you could completely miss the golf ball. And I don't want that to get misinterpreted as I have to get worse to get better. You do not have to go through that process at all. And I wouldn't actually promote that as positive coaching either. So the idea that you have to get worse to get better is a flaw for me. And I think a lot of people don't have golf lessons because they think that's the case. And I do know even people who had golf lessons with me. And again, I've just not been able to, hopefully those that do have lessons with me know that I want to be there to support, because I understand that's an instinctive and intuitive process to go through as a student. And I want to be there as a coach to support you through that, so that you don't fall into that trap. Oh, the reason why I'm not playing well is because my technique doesn't work, or the technique that coach gave me doesn't work. I'll go back to what I was doing. So interesting to hear your thoughts on that. But before I do, everything that we've spoken about today, everything we've spoken about over the last 6 weeks, It's about understanding the game. And I think this has been a really unique opportunity to have these discussions and have these meetings. And I can't thank you enough for being a part of this and going on this little journey with us. But personal par, shot strategy, separation values, quality practice and shot routines, for me, these underpin how well you play on the golf course and how much you enjoy playing the game. And where you can go with it is endless, really. I truly believe if you've got that passion to achieve a goal, then there's no reason why we couldn't have some great fun helping you achieve that. And finally, thank you. One of the things I have done over this lockdown period is I've set up a Mark Day golf coaching page, which I was recommended to do and that I never got around to doing. So if anybody wants to kind of keep in touch with content that I will pop up now and again and bits and pieces, then please do feel free to, if you're a Facebook user, to go onto Facebook and like the page, and we can keep in touch through there as well. But what do we think? Do we need to get worse to get better? What are your experiences, if you're happy to share?
Mark, one thing I've done over the period is I've had a few swings in the back garden. I've got my missus to video them from down the line and in front, and I've noticed, having looked at them several times, I have a fairly obvious to me slight flaw. Now I don't know whether I go back to playing, whether I attempt to fix this or live with it or what. I'm slightly nervous. I mean, I feel on the whole I don't play that badly. I quite enjoy playing. Is it really worth trying to iron out this thing? And I don't know whether it will give me any great improvement or not. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the bit that you noticed. What did you notice when you?
Okay, technically my left arm disconnects from my body when I start my swing. Right at the beginning, it's like my arm rotates and it pushes the club flat behind me.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of lessons with people before in the past, and I have noticed this same thing on video occasionally, but nobody's ever really said to me, oh, you're doing this, what it is. It was only when I had a bit of time to look at it and see exactly what I was doing, I thought, oh, I'll just have a bit of a hunt now and see what this is. And of course, you YouTube it, and lo and behold, it's basically left arm disconnect. So you think, okay, well, how do I fix that? Well, basically, put a glove under your left shoulder and try swinging like that. Is one of the simple ones. So yeah. I'm not quite sure whether to bother about it or not.
So my initial thoughts on this would be that it depends on your goals and what you want to achieve from a scoring perspective, what you're doing on a regular basis at the moment. But my gut instinct would be that if you spent the same amount of time developing the skills that we've spoken about over the last few weeks, if we had a sliding doors moment and I had two Peters and I had one that developed skills that we've been working on over the last 6 weeks for the next 6 weeks, and I had a Peter that practiced with a head cover under his arm for the next 6 weeks, for me, this Peter would be miles ahead. And classic that this Peter actually would have regressed, not because he's necessarily technically worse or he's got worse because he's technically worse, but because he's going to have gone on a negative spiral.
Yeah.
He's going to have felt out of control. Now, if we can understand, and again, this is that endeavor that I was talking about in the thinking process. If you had clarity in, right, this is what I want to improve with my impact, my connection between the club and the ball, okay? And therefore, in order to achieve that head cover under the arm's going to help me create feelings that helps me achieve that, and that starts to produce the ball flight that I want, then that might work. And Ian earlier mentioned in the chat about internal and external thoughts. And there are different ways. So I can think about changing impact by thinking about how the club head is moving, which would be an external thought. Or I could think about hitting it through a hula hoop that's pitched 6 foot in the air. That's an external thought. Or I can think about it having an internal thought like hold the head cover under my arm, or hold my arm close to my body.
Yeah.
So they could both work, but for me, they only work if you've got clarity in how that's going to help you hit the golf ball better. I'll often have players, especially at county and national level, that I'll ask them, why are you doing that? And the answer will be, because my coach told me. My coach told me I'd hit it better. Oh, okay. And does it hit it better? Yeah, it hits it better. Okay, great. So the coach owns that. That's the coach's endeavour. When that goes wrong, that player does not know how to deal with that. And they often don't even have a reference to know whether or not they're actually making the swing that the coach has asked them to, because the coach has worked on a video and they don't have a video to work with on a golf course.
Yeah, that is one of the problems, is that you think you're doing something, but you're not actually when you see it.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult to deal with, really.
Yeah. So for me, it's understanding the goals. What's the scoring goals, right? What are my current shot patterns? How can I maximize those shot patterns? How does that link in? Am I going through the best routines? Am I giving myself the best feedback? And if we develop those skills, then I think you'll be every bit the golfer that you want to be without going through a massive technical change. If you said to me you wanted to play on the seniors tour and you needed to hit the golf ball 50 yards further in order to be able to do that, then we might have to go through on a slightly longer journey because the skills you have at the moment might not match up to what's required at that level.
Okay.
I think going back to your original question, Mark, I think the answer is there is an issue, isn't there, of taking too many drills and techniques from lessons onto the tee, and rather than dealing with it in the sort of pre-routine sort of thought box, rather than seeing the shot, thinking about what you're doing when you're over the ball. That's been an issue for me. And it was one of the things that sort of, I think Gary sort of got me doing was, try and take a lot of these things out of your head, practice them, and work out your own routines sort of pre-shot, but then keep it simple when you're on a tee and making sure that you're seeing the shot that you want to hit.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that links into, right, what's the goal of that practice session? Right, what am I trying to do on a golf course? So quality practice versus shot routines. And 100% people go, oh, brilliant. So it's like me, I could go out, I want my arm position, and I want that to be the thing that I want that to be good. I want that to be where I want it to be in the tournament. And well, I could do that, but it's going to throw my coordination out. If it throws my coordination out, then I could hit it anywhere. And that's not going to help me score the lowest score that I can score. So I need to be smart and understand, well, that's a longer journey. I'm not going to apply that. I'm going to go through the quality practice process. I'm going to continually stretch myself, and eventually it will start to transfer onto the golf course. And therefore, I'm not getting worse to get better. I'm managing my progress. Cool. Right, I'm conscious, guys, we've had an hour. They always fly by. I'm always very nervous going into these things, and just time flies by. Thanks again, as always, for your engagement, for tuning in. For those of you that are getting some golf in this week, enjoy it. It's going to be absolutely awesome. I'm really excited for you. I haven't heard anything yet as to when I can get back coaching, but fingers crossed it will be sooner rather than later. And we'll have a chance to either spend some time on the golf course together or spend a little bit of time on the driving range. But any questions, give me a shout. Go to the Facebook page, keep in touch there, and I'll send an email out over the next couple of days with all of the sessions, so you can revisit those as and whenever you want to. Just a few highlights. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Look forward to seeing everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
See you all soon.